Americans love to complain about infrastructure, and sometimes they have a point. Half-built highways, rail projects strangled by politics, bridges leading to nowhere. It's a toddler's first Lego set, only this one costs billions. These are the infrastructure blunders that cost billions. Quick quiz. Which state spent $14 billion on a rail project that doesn't connect to any major cities? Stick around. That one's up first. And if you like these weekly map dives, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Somebody's gotta stop me from explaining 16th century trade routes at parties. Number 50. The high-speed rail to nowhere. California's high-speed rail might be the most controversial project in recent memory. Phase 1, San Francisco to LA. Phase 2, Sacramento to San Diego. The reality? Mostly paperwork and dirt. Voters signed off in 2008. By May of 2025, $14.4 billion had been sunk into it. Completion date? 2020. Unless these trains double as time machines, something's off. The plan now is Merced to Bakersfield, sometime in the 2030s. Maybe. If you're not from California, that's like subbing Paris to Rome with Strasbourg to Parma. Not quite the same. At this pace, the price tag could top $100 billion, and that's if it ever actually runs. And California isn't the only place building ghost trains. New York's has been stuck for over a decade. Number 49. New York's ghost train. The 2008 meltdown torched the economy, but hey, maybe Americans would at least get trains out of it. Lose your home, get a choo-choo. It's a win-win. Suddenly, high-speed rail was more than a California fever dream. President Obama rolled in with a $787 billion stimulus, and $8 billion of it went to rail. One of those tracks was supposed to be from Buffalo to Albany in New York. Supposed to be. Imagine pre-ordering a train in 2008 and still waiting in 2025. At least New Yorkers are used to delays. You might call this overdue. People in Manhattan call this a regular Tuesday. Number 48. Political hot potato 1. Let's just say Obama-era rail lines have been slow to leave the station. Some rail dreams never even made it out of the crib. In 2010, Republican John Kasich took the governor's seat. First order of business? Killing a rail line that would have linked Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Columbus. Turns out, the only thing moving fast in Ohio was Kasich's veto pen. Obama redirected $385 million elsewhere, but Ohio still burned through $15 million it couldn't recover. As far as politics go, that's kinda cheap. Number 47. Trouble in Paradise. I can't blame anyone for wanting to live in Honolulu. Tropical paradise, beaches, Mai Tais, but as the city sprawled, planners pushed for a rail line to link the suburbs to downtown. The catch? In 2006, it was costing $4 billion, about $200 million per mile. At that price, they might as well have paved it with surfboards. And the bill just kept climbing, thanks to expensive but pretty funny mistakes. Step 1, bulldoze past native burial sites. Step 2, lay tracks too wide for the wheels. By 2021, Honolulu's tropical transit dream had become an $11 billion blooper reel. Number 46, the second Seward's Folly. On Alaska's Seward Peninsula lies the last train to nowhere. It all started when Chicago investors got gold fever, so they decided to build a railway. Sensible, right? The good times would never end. Except they did. The project was canceled in 1907. After 35 miles, 56 kilometers, the line left nothing but debt and trains frozen like giant metal popsicles. But that's nothing compared to number 45. Florida's ghost train. Everyone who took U.S. history knows John D. Rockefeller. Fewer know his partner, Henry Flagler. Just like Johnny D., Flagler took his sketchy fortune and spent it in ways that looked generous, if you squinted at him. To help his sickly wife, Flagler decided Florida needed railroads. A lot of railroads. One was the Overseas Railroad from Key West to the mainland. Construction lasted from 1905 to 1912. Flagler died the next year, which was for good for him, because the project was always doomed. Back then, the Keys had few people, constant money problems, and the worst possible geography for hurricanes. In 1935, a Category 5 storm wiped out 40 miles, 64 kilometers of track. The bankrupt company never stood a chance. There's a long history of railroad blunders in the United States. Some have been much worse disasters, like this next one. Number 44, the first disaster. Railroads built America into the world's biggest economy. They also turned business into a knife fight. It also gave the nation its first major bridge disaster. St. Louis had dreams of launching the first transcontinental railroad. The problem was the Gasconade River. The solution was a 760-foot, 233-meter bridge to be finished on November 1st, 1855. Finished on paper, anyway. The first train rolled out with 600 passengers and plenty of celebration. The bridge, though, was propped up on temporary trestles. Not to worry, though, they were good for 4 miles an hour, hopefully. The train hit the gas. The coal, whatever. It went fast, and the bridge's east bank collapsed. Only one car remained on the tracks by the time the dust settled. 30 to 40 people died, and hundreds more were injured. And that's not the last disaster. Number 43, South Bend train wreck. Just a few years later, another bridge collapsed, this time in South Bend, Indiana. The route from Chicago to Toledo, Ohio, crossed the Springbrook Bridge over a deep ravine. The engineers had planned for everything. Well, except rain. On June 26, 1859, storms flooded the culvert beneath the embankment. The next day, a train with 150 passengers tried to cross, and the bridge collapsed. 33 people were killed, 57 injured. And somehow, 19th century bridge disasters only get stranger. Number 42, Baptismal Disaster. Everyone loves a good baptism, right? Anyone? Anyway. On May 4th, 1873, a crowd gathered in Dixon, Illinois to watch a baptism ceremony in the Rock River. People noticed a crack on the west side, right where the crowd was packed in. Seconds later, the bridge gave way. An 18-foot, 5.5-meter plunge into the cold water. 37 killed, 56 injured. 20 days later, the verdict was in. Bad iron, worse joints, sounds like my grandma complaining about her arthritis. It was a brutal takedown of contractor L.E. Truesdell's big idea, a bridge of short, portable parts. Problem is, they couldn't actually hold up a 660-foot, 200-meter bridge. But hey, at least he made bank. $2.6 million in today's money. Number 41, a fiery end. In 1863, America had its worst train accident of the century. A new experimental bridge was built over the Ashtabula River in Ohio. The key word here is experimental. The bridge was meant to be all iron. Heavier, yes, and that meant trains couldn't be. Then came the shortcuts. Diagonal beams thinner than the blueprints, iron that turned brittle in winter. So the bridge wasn't just waiting for disaster, it was waiting for winter. On December 29th, a train called the Socrates passed over the bridge. The engineer heard a crack, so he went full steam ahead. No one wants to be on a collapsing bridge. The Socrates made it. Hooray! But the train behind it, the Columbia, fell off the bridge, backwards. 92 people died, and 64 were injured. Designer Amasa Stone brushed off the flaws, which is easy when your seat isn't halfway to the river. The smallest mistake can have big consequences, as my dad likes to remind me. But in the next case, that's definitely true. Number 40, August 31st, 1893. 14 people died near Chester, Massachusetts. The cause? A bridge falling into the Westfield River as a train was running over it. But this wasn't because of a glaring design flaw. So what happened? Work crew negligence. For some big brain reason, they removed rivets from a connector plate. It weakened the bridge by 50%, so it couldn't take the weight when a train from the Boston and Albany Railroad went thundering over it. So far, we've learned about California's bullet train that still hasn't left the station, Honolulu's $11 billion rail blooper reel, and a baptism crowd in Illinois that got a little too literal when the bridge collapsed beneath them. And we have a few more costly and surprising infrastructure boo-boos. Number 39. On December 18, 1915, 2 trolley cars crossed each other on the Division Street Bridge in Spokane. Just like my workout attempts, it couldn't handle the weight. The northern section tapped out and fell into the river. 5 dead, 12 injured. What went wrong? The bridge's designer, Hugh Cooper, had a pre-packed excuse. Debris from a washed-out bridge back in 1894. Others weren't buying it. To them, the real culprit was lousy steel. The collapse was inevitable. The old days had their share of disasters. Then the 20th century came along and basically said, "That's cute, watch this." Number 38. This is the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. The sequel. The original bridge opened on July 1st, 1940. It didn't have long to live. On November 7th, it fell apart. The winds were gusting at 40 miles an hour, 64 kilometers an hour. Sure, hardly hurricane force, but it was enough. The bridge stretched nearly 6,000 feet, flexible by design. The flaw? Nobody factored in the wind. Shortly after 11 a.m., a 600-foot, 189-meter span fell first. The rest twisted in the wind, then followed. The ruins remain in Puget Sound. $227 million worth of oops. Number 37. The Tacoma Narrows disaster was a wake-up call for engineers, but some earlier planners clearly hit the snooze button before. On May 30th, 1928, the Silver Bridge opened across the Ohio River, linking Point Pleasant with Gallipolis. It was an I-bar chain suspension bridge, for the 3 bridge nerds taking notes. Each I-bar stretched 45 to 55 feet, 14 to 17 meters, 2 inches 6 centimeters thick, held together with 11.5-inch pins of high-strength steel. Impressive, right? Ready for the but? There were just 2 I-bars per link. Lose one, and you didn't just lose a link, you lost the entire bridge. The chains held nearly 40 years. Then, on December 15, 1967, during rush hour, 1 I-bar cracked. It was just 0.1 inches, but that was enough to bring the whole bridge down. There were 46 victims. Number 36. A month before the Silver Bridge fell, the I-35 West Mississippi River Bridge opened. 40 years later, it joined the list. For bridges, middle age is the graveyard shift. On August 1st, 2007, at the height of rush hour, it fell apart, piece by piece. The central span exploded. Then the adjoining spans fell. 13 people were killed and 145 more injured. The steel gusset plates were undersized from the start. Then traffic got heavier. That meant the bridge was carrying weight it was never built for. You'd think these sorts of flubs would be over by now, but they're not. Number 35. On March 26, 2024, the MV Doll slammed into a pier of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, and it all came down in one shot. But authorities should have seen it coming. In 1980, just 3 years after the bridge opened, a ship hit one of the bridge's piers. That ship was only a third the size of the Dolly, but bigger ships were on the way, waved in by local authorities. When the Panama Canal expanded in the 2000s, Baltimore prepped for bigger ships. Everything was ready, except the part where someone checked what would happen if one hit the Key Bridge. It wasn't a big deal. Well, if you don't count the 6 lives lost, the $1.7 to $1.9 billion for a new bridge, and $15 million bleeding away each day the port was closed. But America's infrastructure blunders don't stop at bridges, and they didn't stop in 2024 either. Number 34. Imagine being stuck in LA. Nightmare, right? Okay, imagine being stuck 450 feet, 137 meters below the city. Oh, and add in a collapsing tunnel. That's what nearly happened to 31 workers on July 14th, 2025. They were digging an 18-foot, 5.5-meter wide, 7-mile, 11-kilometer sewage tunnel to the ocean. 6 miles, 9.6 kilometers from the only exit, the tunnel ceiling gave way behind the crew. From the only access point. Luckily, all 31 got out. The bad news? The project is supposed to wrap by 2028. Good luck with that. And speaking of tunnels with bad luck, number 33. At 8:30 a.m. on May 13, 1949, a truck carrying 20,000 liters, 4,400 gallons of carbon disulfide entered the Holland tunnel from the Jersey side. Illegal then, still illegal now. With rush hour traffic packed in, it still crawled 2,900 feet, 884 meters into the tunnel. Guess what happened next? One drum broke loose, vapors lit, and boom. Firefighters rushed in only for a second blaze to spark. The tunnel's ventilation system fought off the smoke and toxins, but 2 fans on the Jersey side burned out at 1,000 degrees, 538 degrees Celsius. The last fan kept going, only because someone hosed it down. 1 firefighter died, 66 others were injured. The law at the time offered a slap on the wrist, a $50 fine, and 5 days in the slammer. But the driver wasn't even charged. Today's penalties sting quite a bit more, but with only random checks, it's mostly luck of the draw. Turns out, fire and toxic fumes weren't the only tunnel disasters. Sometimes the real blaze is setting $600 million on fire without laying a single mile of track. That's coming up later. But New York's tunnel disasters don't stop that. Number 32. On October 24, 1903, work crews were racing around the clock to dig a subway joining Upper Manhattan to downtown. It was practically rural then, barns, fields, and soon chaos underground. Crews fought stubborn granite, then rain turned it into an even bigger nightmare. The planners weren't worried. Hard labor wasn't on their to-do list. It was immigrants and black laborers doing the grunt work. 2 pounds, about a kilogram of dynamite exploded 1,000 feet, 300 meters from the tunnel's edge, 100 feet, 30 meters below 195th Street. Then everyone shrugged and got back to work. A gust of wind, and the ceiling fell. A rock, 44 feet, 13 meters long, and 5 feet, a meter and a half thick, fell. There were 4 survivors. 10 others died, some crushed beyond recognition. Not every American infrastructure blunder is tragic. Some are just tragically funny, and there are plenty of those to go around, like the next bridge on the list. Number 31. California's San Gabriel Mountains have a bridge to nowhere. Really, it crosses the East Fork River, part of a highway project that died before it even got paved. Now it's stranded in Sheep Mountain Wilderness. It's used by hikers and bungee jumpers who treat it like nature's sketchy amusement park. The trail hasn't been maintained since 2010. A 2015 rockfall still blocks the way, and fatalities do happen. Proof that the bridge to nowhere does lead to somewhere bad. Number 30. From bridge to nowhere to gate to nowhere. In 2014, Washington Park had 2 leftover columns dressed in reflective acrylic. It passed off as modern art. The art was later removed, exposing what it really was: the stump of a dead project. In 1962, Seattle planned to ram the R.H. Thompson Expressway through Washington Park and even built the ramps. Locals revolted. Environmentalists and the Black Panthers teamed up like a weird Avengers crossover, only with picket signs. The project died in 1971, but the ramps sat there for decades. By 2016, they started to come down. One stump still remains in 2025, a concrete participation trophy for the protesters. Now, we've seen the I-35 West Bridge in Minneapolis fold at middle age, the Key Bridge in Baltimore taken out by one wrong turn, and LA nearly bury 31 workers in a sewage tunnel to nowhere. Ready to keep going? Good, because this disaster train don't stop for no one. Number 29. Alaska has some special infrastructure needs, but you probably already knew that. In 2016, an iceberg rammed a barrier protecting the Miles Glacier Bridge, better known as the $1 Million Bridge. Back in its day, it earned its keep. $200 million in copper moved across it. Then it got downgraded to a road bridge, wrecked in the '64 earthquake, and ignored until 2005. The patch-up job cost $19 million. For what? Good question. Forget driving over it. You can't even drive to it. These days, the $1 Million Bridge is basically a tourist stop for jet boats. Chances are the bridge will eventually collapse. The only reason anyone cares is salmon. Authorities fear a collapse could mess up the Copper River fishery. So the bridge might go down in history as the world's most expensive fish tank decoration. Number 28. Think building a bridge for salmon is questionable? Try building one for a single man. For industrialist Benjamin Franklin Mebane Jr., that wasn't madness. It was the plan. Mebane had a number of textile mills in North Carolina's Rockingham County, and by the 1920s, the Baron had a new idea: chemicals, and no, not the Breaking Bad kind. Mebane had the land, but it was cut off from the towns of Spray and Draper. His solution? Build a bridge across the Dan River. Mebane greased enough palms to push the bridge through. It opened in 1924, leading to nowhere. Roads finally arrived in 1935, 10 years after Mebane was gone, because the contractor sued the county to recover its losses, over $821,000 in 2025. Roads finally reached the bridge in 1968. By 2003, it was closed. Today, it's a relic, the prototype bridge to nowhere. But bridges aren't alone. America's got a few tunnels to nowhere too. Number 27, the tiny tunnel of broken dreams. Flagstaff, Arizona was booming in the 1880s. Railroads, lumber, and ambitious businessmen. Who needs Honolulu? James Eddy wanted to run a line south to the mining camp of Globe. Just one problem though, the Mogollon Rim. It was a rock wall marking the Colorado Plateau. To cross it, it meant a 3,000-foot-long, 900-meter tunnel that was 16 feet 5 meters wide. Easy on paper, brutal in stone. Not to worry, the project began. They dug 70 feet 21 meters before going broke. Eddy kept at it, chasing investors and laying 35 miles 56 kilometers of track. Then, the money ran out again, and the rails went to scrap. All that's left is a stub of a tunnel, if you can fight through the weeds to find it. Number 26, North Carolina's Smoky Mountains have their own pointless tunnel. 1,200 feet, 366 meters of concrete dead end at the tip of Lakeview Drive. There were roads once, until Fontana Dam drowned them in the 40s. Replacement roads promised in the 60s never happened. So now the tunnel just sits there, doing nothing. If you plan to walk through it, travel guides advise bringing a flashlight. It gets dark in the middle. It is an abandoned tunnel after all. Number 25. Back in the mid-90s, New Jersey Transit dreamed big with the Access to the Region's Core project. Translation? Dig a big tunnel. It would go from Secaucus Junction to a new station by Penn. Except it didn't. It took over a decade for construction to start. That happened in June of 2009. But then Chris Christie became governor. Less than a year later, he canned it. Don't worry, only $600 million was spent. Number 24. Under some of the world's busiest streets is another tunnel gathering dust. New Yorkers don't need prompting to roast the Metro Transit Authority, legendary for its budget black holes. So of course the city has its very own tunnel to nowhere. Today, the 2nd Avenue subway crawls from 63rd to 96th Street. But back in the 70s, the plan was bigger. They even dug a tunnel between 110th and 120th. Then the city went broke, sealed it up, and left it like a time capsule of failure. That might change soon though, with contracts for Phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway having been awarded in August of 2025. It only took over 50 years. Way to go. Number 23. East Fork Road was meant to link the San Gabriel Valley to Wrightwood in San Bernardino County, California. Then the Los Angeles flood of 1938 wrecked it. It caused $1.74 billion in damage in 2024 cash, wiped out the route, and left it half-finished. Today, it runs from Route 39 to a campground, and that's it. Number 22. Remember the $1 Million Bridge? It anchors Alaska's Copper River Highway, meant to run from Cordova to Chitina. But after the 1964 earthquake, the road barely stretched beyond it. Only 12 miles, 19 kilometers were paved. The rest were left for the elements. In 2011, it got a shiny new title, the Scenic Byway. 3 months later, erosion shut down Bridge number 339. The highway ends there, and has ever since. Scenic? Maybe. Useful? Not so much. Number 21. Politics and infrastructure don't mix very well, like fire and gasoline. In 2008, Sarah Palin, then Alaska's governor and VP candidate, claimed credit for stopping the Gravina Island Bridge, better known as the modern bridge to nowhere. Seriously, there are bridges to nowhere everywhere. At this point, it's basically its own genre of public works. What Sarah Palin didn't mention was the $25 million already burned. For what? A 3.2-mile, 5-kilometer road that begins at a dead end and ends at Ketchikan's airport. A road to nowhere, unless you count the terminal. Number 20. Back in the 70s, Illinois tried to fix Waukegan's traffic with the Amstutz Expressway, a 2.9-mile, 4.6-kilometer stretch of Route 137. It was supposed to cut through downtown congestion. Instead, it stalled in North Chicago. Guess where it went? That's right. Nowhere. The short road still exists, only 15,000 vehicles use it a day. Needless to say, the traffic stayed. The Amstutz was just money poured into asphalt with no return. We've had $1 million bridges that now serve salmon, tunnels abandoned mid-dig, and roads that start with fanfare and end at campgrounds or airport driveways. Oh, and we can't forget about the bridges that went, hang on. That's right, nowhere. America's infrastructure may not get you where you're going, but it'll get you nowhere in style. Number 19. Back in 1962, the state of Arizona started building Route 76, a road meant to tie Route 77 to Pepper Sauce Wash. Great name, terrible plan. There was also a leg to Benson and San Manuel's copper mine. By 1974, the mine section was decommissioned. By 1988, the whole road was abandoned. The one thing left, a name. The Department of Transport still keeps Route 76 on the books. Basically, millions of dollars for fancy letterhead and a few road closed signs. Number 18. On paper, Maryland Route 10 was going to save Route 2 traffic. 6 lanes running from Baltimore's Edge to US 301. The idea's not a new one. It's been around since the 50s, but just like the traffic, construction crawled. Once I-97 showed up, the rest of the plan died. The last piece opened in 1991. Route 2 jams never went away. Route 10 now hauls a modest 51,600 cars daily. Okay, that sounds bad, but a nuclear power station blunder? That's a whole new tier of nightmare fuel. Stick around, that one's coming up. Number 17, along Pennsylvania Route 23, near Bridgeport, you'll find half-built ramps and stretches of pavement. The rest is just empty fields. They're reminders of a road that collapsed straight out of the blueprint stage. In the 60s, Pennsylvania dreamed up the Schuylkill Parkway, a freeway linking US 30 to Route 772. It never happened. What's left is nicknamed the Goat Path, and it's not named after LeBron. It's all because construction stopped right away. There was instant opposition over environmental concerns. Oh, that and the whole lack of money thing. The freeway died in 1977, its right-of-way planted over and rented out to farmers. What was supposed to carry cars now carries cows, and hasn't changed since. Number 16. U.S. Route 222 in Pennsylvania moves from Lancaster County to Maryland's Cecil County. But get to reading, and locals will tell you about their road to nowhere. It started in 1964 and originally ended in a cornfield. By 1999, it hooked up with the Warren Street Bypass and Route 422. For the first time in decades, it gave the impression of being an actual highway. By 2006, the road linked into its current route, but northbound traffic just dumps onto Route 73 at the Blandon bottleneck. Even local reporters joked it was still going nowhere. Talk about false hope. Number 15. Remember that tunnel in North Carolina? It wasn't pointless by accident. It was part of Lakeview Drive, promised in 1943 to replace Park Road's drowned by Fontana Lake. Construction started, stretched 6.5 miles from the dam to Bryson City, and stopped. By 1971, $4.1 million was gone. In 2001, a congressman threw another $16 million at it. The road never budged. Swain County eventually cashed in. $52 million in 2010 for breach of contract, due by 2020. But the road wasn't finished bleeding money. In 2023, it needed another $15.6 million in repairs. At this rate, it's less a road and more a subscription service. Number 14, few people live in the center of the United States. But there's a big road, Route 83. It goes from West Hope, North Dakota to Brownsville, Texas. Sure, there are stops, the Alamo, if you swing wide. You can even time your trip for the Ozfest in Liberal, Kansas, celebrating the Wizard of Oz, if you're into celebrating fictional real estate damage. But it's mostly prairies, as far as the eye can see. Number 13. April 13th, 1992 was supposed to be a normal day in Chicago. The Kinsey Street Bridge needed repair, so crews drove new pilings 3.5 feet a meter south of the old ones. One small problem, though. Nobody mentioned the forgotten tunnel right below them. The pilings didn't crack it, but they shoved clay into it until it gave way. The clay liquefied and the tunnel flooded. A worker noticed, but the city's response was about as fast as rush hour on the Dan Ryan. Soon, the basements of buildings in the loop were flooded with dirty water. It and the financial district had to be evacuated. Operations at the Chicago Board of Trade were suspended. The Merchandise Mart building reported fish swimming in its basement. Hey, free aquarium. The price tag, roughly $4 billion adjusted. The cause, a communication screw-up so bad, the contractor walked and the city took the heat. Number 12. 3 Mile Island got its shiny new nuclear plant in 1969. $2 billion in today's money. Nothing could go wrong, yeah? Well, just 10 years later, on March 28, 1979, a pressure valve refused to close, and everything went wrong. As Unit 2 lost cooling water, the real meltdown came from human error. Operators misread the gauges and turned off the backup water. And here I am, stressed about uploading a video. Anyway, temperatures reached 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit, 2,300 degrees Celsius, and contaminated water started to leak into a nearby building. And the radioactive gases decided to join the party. 140,000 people had to evacuate. The backup systems kicked in and the reactor core stabilized. But 3 years later, the truth came out. The Unit 2 core was half molten. Cleanup dragged on for 14 years and $2 billion in today's money. The real cost was what came after. Nuclear power's reputation tanked, carbon emissions soared, and only now is it clawing its way back. Still, as scary as meltdown sounds, nothing tops infrastructure that fails by sending an actual wall of water at you. Number 11, 2020, the year of toilet paper hoarding, dodging strangers, and breathing too close, which got you the death stare. Pretty much my normal lifestyle. But on May 19th, Michigan's Edenville and Sanford dams decided to call it quits. Built in the 1920s, Edenville had a fatal flaw: loose sands in its embankment. Heavy rains soaked them in. Pretty soon, the soil collapsed, and so did the dam. Add in a downstream slope steeper than common sense, and it never stood a chance. Honestly, the miracle was that it held together for as long as it did. When Edenville failed, a huge current surged into Sanford Lake. It overflowed, and the residents of nearby Midland had to evacuate. $175 million in damage was done. Turns out, ignoring dirt and geography costs money. About $4.8 billion to be exact. We've hit our top 10, and we've discovered roads that end in cornfields, tunnels double as cash vacuums, and a nuclear plant can melt its reputation. Any ideas what the biggest blunder is? Let's find out together. Number 10. On July 24, 2010, Delhi's dam collapsed. Delhi, Iowa, that is. There were warning signs. Floods in 2008 caused $500,000 in damage. Then in 2009, a safety inspection found minor issues. Minor issues, major miss. Built in the 1920s, the dam skipped a key detail. A concrete wall didn't reach the crest. So when 10 inches, 25 centimeters of rain fell in 12 hours, erosion sped things up. It meant 8,000 people were evacuated. No lives were lost, but $16 million had to be spent on a replacement dam, finally finished in 2016. A late fix for an early oversight. Number 9. There were once 2 Austin dams in the United States, and they're both gone now. Austin was booming by 1900, but just not fast enough for the city's bankers and land barons. Their solution? Build a dam on the Colorado River. It would irrigate fields, power factories, and, most importantly, line their pockets. After some legal gymnastics, the city borrowed $1.4 million in 1890 to make it happen. It was a disaster. The spot was badly chosen. The chief engineer quit over the poor materials being used. By 1893, the dam was complete, but it never generated the power its champions said it would. On April 6, 1900, a storm hit. By the next day, the river was spilling over the dam and ripping it to pieces. 50 lives were lost. A new dam didn't arrive until the 1940s. Talk about a rain check. Number 8, the second Austin Dam. George Bayless owned a paper mill in Austin, Pennsylvania, and in 1909 he needed water. The valley wasn't reliable, so he ordered up a dam. Seriously? DoorDash struggles with my nuggets. It was supposed to be 30 feet thick, 50 feet high, and 540 feet long. That's 9 by 15 by 165 meters. About $3 million in today's money. You probably guessed it, there was some cost cutting. The dam only got to 20 feet, 6 meters thick. But wait, there's more. One small detail got skipped. The underground concrete slab meant to stop water from sneaking under the dam. Always nice when the foundation is optional. The dam had less than 2 years to live. It rained for a week at the end of September 1911. Water rose to 48 feet, 15 meters high, and the dam couldn't hold back the pressure. Over 3,000 people were in town that day. 78 died. Bayless cost-cutting cost $10 million in property damage. Today, the ruins are on the National Register of Historic Places. A second dam was built and also failed. So they gave up on the whole damn thing. Pun intended. Number 7. Arizona's first major infrastructure project ended in disaster. In February of 1890, the Walnut Canyon Dam above the town of Wickenburg burst. Over 100 people died. How did it happen? Money, obvi. 2 New Yorkers, Wells and DeWitt Bates, yes, that's their real names, thought they'd struck gold, literally. They had bought a mine in Yavapai County and dammed the Hassayampa River. Too bad they treated it like a stock gamble instead of an engineering project. A couple of heavy rains later, the spillway started to cave. The disaster hit peak stupidity when the superintendent sent Dan Berkey, a known drunk, to warn the town, and paid him in advance. Dan Berkey did what Dan Berkey did. He drank it all. The dam gave way just after midnight. The Wells should have known better. They had recent history to go off of. Number 6. Williamsburg, Massachusetts has a 15-mile, 24-kilometer stream, the Mill River, but it's not the same year-round. In 1864, the Williamsburg Reservoir Company was formed. The objective? Dam the river and have a reservoir power their operations in drier summer months. Simple fix, right? Nope. The bosses went cheap, not safe. Despite warnings from surveyors and workers, they cut corners. Finished in 1866, the dam stretched 600 feet, 183 meters by 43 feet, 13 meters high. Earthen embankments propped up a stone wall. 8 years later, heavy rain seeped through the sloppy grouting and ripped off a 40-foot, 12-meter slab of earth, and the whole thing crumbled after that. The cost-cutting had big costs. $100,000 in relief and an additional $120,000 to rebuild Williamsburg and other towns. Plus, 139 lives that could never be rebuilt. But that was nothing compared to an entire city underwater. Number 5. 50% of New Orleans is below sea level. It wasn't always like that, but a growing population demanded more land. By the turn of the 21st century, the city was almost 12 feet 3.6 meters below sea level, so it relied on a network of levees to keep the water out. Hurricane Betsy swamped New Orleans in 1965, racking up over $1 billion in damage. Congress told the Army Corps of Engineers to modernize the levees. 4 decades later, the work was still only 60 to 90% done. Warnings came in 1998 after Hurricane George rattled Lake Pontchartrain. The message was clear: one big storm could drown the city. 7 years later, Katrina did. Nearly 1,400 fatalities were recorded. It cost $125 billion at the time, tied for the costliest storm on record. $20 billion for 350 miles, 560 kilometers of new levees was part of that. All the money spent before then was a waste, and then some. But an even deadlier flood wasn't because of a storm, it was the product of greed. Number 4. The deadliest U.S. infrastructure disaster wasn't about failure, but misuse. Pennsylvania's South Fork Dam was built in the mid-1800s as a reservoir. By 1881, it was the private playground of the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. Picture Gilded Age tycoons like Andrew Carnegie sipping brandy at Lake Conemaugh while sitting on a ticking time bomb. To keep themselves cozy, the club made a few changes to the dam. Bad ones. What started as a convenience would end in catastrophe. On May 31, 1889, it rained hard. Between 6 and 10 inches, 15 to 25 centimeters fell in just a day. By morning, Johnstown's streets were already filling with water. By mid-afternoon, the dam was gone. What came next hit Johnstown like Niagara Falls on wheels, flattening homes, livestock, and anyone in the way. 2,200 lives lost and $590 million in today's money. Worst water slide ever. You got your own pick for the worst infrastructure screw-up? Let me know in the comments. Now it's time for the last two, and the final grade. Number 3. Water Woes. Part 1. Some places drown, others go thirsty. Even today, 2.2 million Americans live without running water. That's basically all of Houston turning the taps and getting nothing. The cost, about $8.5 billion in lost labor and productivity, hitting minority, rural, and Native American communities the hardest. Leading us to number 2, up to 10 times as many Americans aren't short on water, they're just getting it through lead pipes. Flint, Michigan grabbed the spotlight, but Chicago is the real nightmare. 80% of homes still use lead service lines, thanks to a building code that actually required them until 1986. In 2019, then-Mayor Lori Lightfoot introduced an $8.5 billion plan to replace the 650 toxic pipes. By 2021, they had removed 3. One lawmaker said it would take 500 years at that pace, making it less a public works plan and more a time capsule project. Something as basic as this should give you a clue about what's coming next. Finally, number 1. It might not seem like it, but America poured $1.5 trillion into infrastructure over 20 years. The result? Drumroll please, the American Society of Civil Engineers bumped its grade from a D in 2001 to a D+ in 2025. About the same curve my GPA survived on. What disasters do you think will rack up trying for a C? Let me know below. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack.